All right, guys, so in today's video, what I'm going to be sharing is how we generated $997,000 in revenue at a 3.54x ROAS. I'm going to be sharing the meta ads, the Facebook ads, account structure, showing you guys how we set up our campaigns, the ad sets, the ads, what we're testing, and our process for scaling that as well, right? So I'm going to share my screen. Let's jump in and hope you enjoy this one. Thanks. Just a quick refresh for you guys to see that we did just under $1 million in revenue at a 3.54x ROAS. So let's talk about the meta ad structure, the decision making, and the scaling process that we are using to achieve these kind of results. So just want to start with the structure. And the ad account structure we're using to achieve these kind of results on Meta is crazy complex. You ready? One CBO campaign per offer or per product. Broad audience, male, female, 18 plus, you only narrow by location. We test creatives in individual ad sets. Each creative has 2 to 4 variations each. We set the minimum spend limit on each ad set, which is divided equally among the ad sets. The total minimum limit across all ad sets is 50% of the CBO daily budget, right? I'm going to explain this in a little bit. We do this when the campaign is launched. If an ad set is working, we simply increase the spend in that minimum spend limit on the ad set and increase overall CBO campaign budget by maximum 50% every 2 days. And we turn off poor performing creatives inside ad sets. So crazy complex, right? It's actually really, really simple. And I'm going to show you just a visual of this as well in the ads manager. So, we have our CBO campaigns that we run, a few at a time. Right now we have 2 active, and you can see that, all these are consolidated by the number of purchases that we're getting on each one, right? And with a low CPA. Now, inside each of these CBO campaigns, we have different ad sets, right? All these are ad sets. And what we do is we apply a minimum spend limit to each one when we're starting, right? So this one is $20. And this is the minimum spend limit we increase if it's performing well, right? We also increase the overall CBO budget of the campaign to match that as well, just so that we get more spend overall going to the ad sets. Now, inside an ad set, as I mentioned, we can have anywhere from 2 to 4 different variations. This one is 2, this one is 4. And what we'll do is if a creative in here is spending a lot of money, but it's not performing to our target, we'll turn it off and we'll direct the spend inside that ad set to other creatives that have maybe more of a chance of working. Okay, so that is really a visual. And just jumping back to explain this minimum spend limit a little bit more. So I said we set the minimum spend limit on each ad set, which is divided equally among the ad sets. The total minimum spend limit across all ad sets is 50% of the total CBO daily budget. And an example of this is, let's say our daily budget for the campaign is $300, right? We have 5 ad sets, which means we take $150, so 50% of the total daily budget, 50% of 300, and we split that as minimum spend limits across 5 ad sets. That means each of the 5 ad sets will have a $30 daily minimum spend limit, right? All of them combined is $150, which is 50% of the total. Then Meta will use the additional 50%, the other $150, to allocate it wherever it thinks it's best, right? So that's what we do. It's also to make sure that each ad set in a CBO campaign gets, at least some spend, because if you don't apply minimum spend limits, what we found is that Meta is just going to direct spend to maybe, the top 2 or 3 ad sets that you have in the campaign, and the other ones are just not going to get spend, right? So it's just a way for us to make sure that we're testing the ad sets and the creatives. So that is the structure itself. Now, going into the decision making and the scaling process. So we let ad sets spend anywhere between 3 to 6x our target CPA before making a decision to turn it off. And how long we wait for this depends on how high our CPA target is, right? The higher our CPA target, the lower we should spend, just so that we're not overspending. So just for an example, if our CPA target is $30, we can spend $150 on the ad set before making a decision to turn it off. If our CPA target is, let's say, $250, much higher, then we can spend around $650 before making a decision to turn it off, right? So if we were to wait 6x 250 as our CPA target, it's a lot of spend, on each ad set to make that decision. So we tend to make decisions a little bit earlier. And with $650 in this case, we still have a lot of data to make a decision, right? If an ad set is working, what we do is we increase the minimum spend limit on the ad set and increase the overall CBO campaign budget by maximum 50% every 2 days. That's what I was talking about. If something is working, is what we're doing, right? For this account, we're not using another campaign such as an ASC, an Advantage Plus campaign for scaling. We found that we have better performance when we just keep everything in one campaign, all right? And we have separate campaigns for different products and offers, which means if an offer stops working, if a product goes out of stock, and we have to turn that campaign off, the other campaigns aren't affected, right? This also means we can scale multiple campaigns at a time and spread our risk. So a lot of people have a strategy of, one campaign for just purely testing, right? It's a testing ground, maybe it's ABO, and they're using a CBO campaign as like a graduating campaign. They're moving winning creatives from that ABO into the CBO, and maybe they're keeping the ones in the ABO, maybe they're turning them off. But what we found is that when we have this CBO structure and we just scale them within the same campaign, it's just much more seamless and more often than not leads to better performance. So I'm not saying that the other one doesn't work, because every ad account is different. There are some ad accounts we have where we take a little bit of different approach because we've tried this and maybe it doesn't work as well as in other accounts, right? Sometimes ASC crushes it in other accounts. Also depends on different times of the year, right? Sometimes ASC will be performing well, we'll leverage that, we'll run it, and then it will just stop performing, right? So just keep this in mind, but test it. But keep in mind that every ad account is different, and you need to test different structures to find what works best for you, and then double down on that, all right? And for us, the scale comes from having winners in your ad account, right? So the more winning creatives and funnels you have, the further you can scale. So in this example, as I gave you, we have 2 active campaigns. Both are separate offers and separate products, and they're working independent of each other, right? And in each of these, what we're aiming to do is, okay, we're not just aiming for each campaign overall to be working well. That's obviously the main goal. But in order for those campaigns overall to be working well, we need winning ad creatives inside of them, right? So the more winning ad creatives we can find, the more we'll be able to scale, because the more ad spend we can allocate to those specific ones. All right. So hopefully that makes sense as a structure and a philosophy for scaling. But we're finding more and more like simplicity scales, right? Don't overcomplicate it. The media buying, just keep it simple. Have it make sense, right? Something like this where it makes sense logically, and use broad targeting. As long as your pixel has enough data, Meta should be able to use that to find your audiences for you, right? It should be able to use your creative angles to find who is most likely to resonate with those. All right, so that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you soon.